Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown. And today we're going to take a look at a case which is, shall we say, unresolved. One of the strangest cases ever. Um, and it is the case of the death of Steven Haataja. 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 Very unique name, which I guess is a Scandinavia. Um, and There has been a lot that goes on all over the internet about what could possibly have happened to this guy because it was so unusual. And so I'm going to get into all of that. Yeah, I want to welcome everybody who's in the chat room first. Hello, everybody. If I'm Harper's now here, if I haven't said hello to everybody else, yep. So welcome. And if you're new to the channel and you wonder if you'd like to be in that chat room, you should want to be in the chat room because everybody's really nice. So below you'll see a link to Patreon. You can join that. It's $5 a month. That's at one level. It's a support and educational channel, and you can come to 2 lives every week, a case show like this on the weekend, and a hangout during the week, and also be part of our community. And it does keep this channel going. And if you don't want to do that, please do at least subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, because all of my videos are public and there's nothing hidden special behind the scenes, because that bothers me. If I have something to say that I think is worthwhile, well, I want everybody to be able to learn something from it. So that's that. And also, I would like to say I have a new channel which I just started. And somebody said, Pat, you should advertise your channel. It's your channel. And yeah, I guess that's true. And actually, I had done some of these videos on this channel just because it was fun to do. But then somebody said you should have a separate channel. And so I have. It's now called Dear Profiler Pat. I just started this. I'm moving over the videos that I had already done, and I'm adding new ones. And so if you have any questions about life, I'm profiling people, profiling situations from my experience and from my profiling background. And so I think I'm better than Dear Abby. I really do. But anyway, you might want to check that out. If you have somebody in your life who you look at these things and you go, yeah, they have this problem, send it to them. See how they react. Anyway, okay, so let's go. And Linda's now here, and Leah's here, and okay, Beverly's here. Okay, let's go. What about this guy? This guy seems like such a nice guy, and that's one of the things. People are kind of funny. Maybe it's just human nature, but if the person seems like a person you would like to know, and a decent person, when they die due to some circumstance, it affects us more than if you go, yeah, it was a gangbanger. Oh well. But when you have somebody who shouldn't have died as young as he did, then you say, why? What happened to this guy? What happened? So there's a question whether he took himself out or somebody else took him out. And if he took himself out, the question is why? And if somebody else took him out, the question is why? So let me read you just the basics of this case. On December 4th, 2006, this Steve Haataja talked to someone and sent a few emails, and then he was never heard from again. Haataja was a math professor at Chadron State College in Nebraska. The campus is about 300 miles northeast of Denver. Very isolated location, I have to say. Let me just show you some pictures from that location, because this has some importance. This is the town. This is the town. It looks like something from the 1950s. This is the area. Look at it. It's this town in the middle of freaking nowhere, and this is what everything around it looks like. Very isolated. And there's a reason this is important, in the sense that this guy was a PhD, and before arriving in Chadron, a PhD, and they were like, holy crap, this guy's brilliant. He's like, as a mathematician goes, he was, let me see if I can find I want to find the, unless I forgot to put it up there, which I probably did. Darn it all. The thing he wrote. Let me see if I can find it because it's gonna bug me now. Hold on, guys. You know me. Hold on. Ah, I'm sorry, I forgot to bring it over. It was the thing he wrote. I'm going to read it. Okay, I'm going to go over to my photos because it just didn't show up. Okay, I will read you his. I don't know what this is that he wrote. Um, Let me find it because you could just see how brilliant. Oh, here it is. His dissertation by Steven Haataja, the amalgamation of inverse semigroups in operator algebras. What? The amalgamation of inverse semigroups and operator algebras. The guy's a genius. Okay, he was a genius, and he had some issues. So before he arrived in this kind of like remote location, uh, he had some things that went wrong in his life. Let me just first, I just want to show you some pictures of him because I like this guy. I really do. I like him. So here he is. Like, and I'm sure who he's with here, and then he's with his dad here, and here he is with his family. And there he is. He just seems like a nice guy. Everybody said he was a nice guy, a super nice guy. A little introverted, maybe a little, I don't know, Aspergery because he's a math genius, and that sort of comes with the territory. But before he came here, he had some issues. He ended up divorced. He went skating and fell and broke his hip, and he had to recover from that. So he was in a wheelchair for a while, and that sucked. And it took him a while to get his PhD. He finally gets his PhD, and he gets a job out here. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this town, but it's kind of isolated. And they were, again, ecstatic that they got this kind of bright guy in their location. And he was teaching algebra, college algebra to college students. I'm going to say, I've been a professor. Not that I didn't love my students, but man, that's kind of low level, especially when you have these days kids come into college and they're like, they can barely do general math, man, and now he's got to, poor guy's got to teach college algebra. Not, and they says here he was actually teaching trigonometry, college algebra, and calculus. I don't know how many of those, well, at least the calculus and trigonometry, but algebra is pretty basic. The student said he was a very nice guy, very concerned, and all of that. He was there 3 months before he vanished. Only 3 months. So, but he had some issues. So a year before he arrived here, apparently there is a claim that he tried to commit suicide, taking some pills and it didn't work, or somebody stopped him. That's the rumor-ish thing. So he was struggling with life. There's no question about he was struggling with life. And then he arrives here, but people liked him. This is a kind of a, I don't know what you call it. It's a very unique town. And I want to show you where I got some of my information from. All right, before we get into the town itself, I just want to show you this picture though. There he is. This is right kind of before he disappeared and ended up dead. There he is with people and he's having a beer, and he's actually found a place that seemed like they appreciated him. So right before he disappeared, people said he was upbeat. He seemed happy. He was planning for the next day. He was planning for the next semester. That's why a lot of people believed he was murdered, because they cannot understand how he seemed to be getting on and going, looking forward to life and being accepted in this town. And then suddenly decide to take his life. It didn't make sense to people. So, but I want to show you where I got some of my information from before I tell you a little bit more about what happened to him. There are, hold on a sec, right. So, Love and Terror on the Howling Plains of Nowhere. And this is by Poe Ballantine. And I have this book right here. One of the best books I've ever written. Poe Ballantine is a quirky fellow who has tried to follow in the footsteps of John Steinbeck, one of my favorite writers, that he lived in many odd places to learn to be with the people and then write about the people. He had his own issues. And he will say, like, I thought I was going to kill myself a bunch of times because my life sucked and I couldn't sell any of my writing. And he's got his own issues. but this is one of the best books I've ever read. Now, he has some other books that were given to me by a lovely patron. And I have to say, I appreciated reading them. I still think this is his best book. And I have to say, being an author myself, and that a lot of times, many authors have the one book that's really good, and then the rest kind of suck. And this is the book. John Steinbeck, an anomaly. Everything he ever wrote was freaking good. That's my opinion. But a lot of people, they got this one book, that the Great American Novel type thing or whatever, the great novel, and they get that out there and they spend years on it, and then the publishers say, okay, we want a book every year, and then they write some lesser stuff. But this is a great book. Now, that book also ended up being a documentary. Now, I put this one up here, Absolute Mysteries, which is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. So you got the pyramid. It's like some creepy thing that happened. But the actual documentary, which is called Love and Terror on the Howling Plains of Nowhere, is actually this guy, Poe Ballantine, explaining everything. And all the people of the area are also there from the town, explaining their town. And it's actually very cool. It's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. Now, you can also see the documentary elsewhere. So here's another version. Okay, so you'll see that the one below, Abduction Mystery, which there's no proof he was abducted. So I don't know why they come up with that crap. But anyway, and the stupid pyramid thing. And it's only got 1,000 views. And there's only like 3 comments on it. So I sent that one out as a link. But above it, you'll see this channel, Real Stories, has 6 million subscribers, and they call it The Mysterious Murder of Brilliant Mathematics Professor Crime Documentary. It has got a lot of views and a hell of a lot of comments hating the heck out of this documentary. They're like, this documentary sucks. Now, why do they say that? Because they presented it as a crime documentary, and it's not exactly that. This book is not just about Steve and his demise. This is about the town and human beings. So it's a fascinating look into people. And that is what the documentary is as well. I love the documentary. It's so cool. It's quirky as heck. All these different people in town talk about everything that happened in town. It's great. And of course, Steve Haataja is actually kind of a smaller part of it. But so people got really upset because they thought they were coming to a crime documentary. And what the hell? It's like an hour and a half of not Steve Haataja. It's an hour and a half of other people. But I think it's brilliant. Okay, I think the documentary is brilliant. So go watch it. So I don't care what other people say. I appreciate fine work. But okay, let's go back to the situation. Let me read you the rest of it. Okay, Steve Haataja was a math professor at Chadron State College in Nebraska. The campus is about 300 miles northeast of Denver. He only worked there for a few months. That's true. He was remembered as a quiet man who taught trigonometry, college algebra, and calculus. On March 9th, a man working on a wrench. So, by the way, he disappeared. He just like vanished one night. And I'll get into how he vanished and what the evidence was on the night he vanished. I'll get into that. So he disappeared. 3 months goes by and nobody knows where the heck the guy went to. Now, they hardly knew Steve. It's like, they're like, well, I don't know. Maybe he just left town, Maybe he just ran off. He just got sick of living in this tiny little place and said, screw it. And they left. There was food in his refrigerator and all that. And it didn't look like he should have run off. But hey, we hardly know the guy. Although there were actually people liked him. But still, hey, we hardly know the guy. But so about 3 months after he disappeared. So he's there like 3 months, and then 3 months later he disappeared. He was there 3 months, and then he disappeared. Now, 3 months later, because they didn't know what happened to him, and they had sent out patrols to look for him and everything, but nobody found him. But one day on March 9th, a man working on a ranch just southwest of Chadron found Haataja's body. He doesn't like to talk about what he found and worries he could harm the investigation. Clearly, it was not a pretty sight. On Wednesday, investigators said Haataja died of smoke and soot inhalation combined with thermal injuries, and they declined to elaborate. This is coming from the local media. Yet, outside forensics experts say the autopsy shows that Haataja was still alive when he breathed in the toxic levels of smoke and heat. Haataja's sister tells us she cannot talk about the investigation, and police don't want to talk about the investigation either. People who live in Chadron have no idea what happened to Haataja. However, there's plenty of speculation, which there is. Some of the theories may be accurate, some maybe not. Well, duh, until you prove anything, it could be one or the other. What is clear is there is a mystery in Chadron that grows stranger by the day. People say Haataja had dealt with depression. That is true. But when he left his home on December 4th, his family says his refrigerator had fresh groceries in it. His car was still in Chadron. I thought I guess he has a car, but he walked a lot. He walked a lot. In spite of the broken hip, because he had fallen and broken his hip and recovered. And a lot of people say because he was found in such a remote place out in the, like far away from the college, like he had to walk a long way. And I'll get into that. He wouldn't have done that if he had a broken hip. But other people say he walked 10 blocks to work. He walked 10 blocks home. He liked hiking around. So I'm going to say maybe his hip wasn't bothering him as much as people say. So his car was still in Chadron, and his family say he was excited about his new job at Chadron State. And that's that. Everybody seems to think he was quite happy. And he'd actually found, he's an odd duck, I say, maybe Aspergery, and he found this place where people, if you watch the documentary, you see how people talked with him and actually liked him. So he might have found this little place in the world safe for him, where people liked him and were quirky enough to appreciate him. So that lends toward, that he would have no reason to do himself in if he finally found a place to be at. All right. Police are working with the members of the Nebraska State Patrol to find out exactly what happened to Haataja. If they are any closer to arriving at an answer, they simply will not say. Well, that was, what year are we talking about? So this all happened in 2006. We're in 2024. It's been 18 years and nothing. They have really come up with not an exact conclusion on this case, which is why it continues to be the weird mystery and the pyramid thing shows up. It's like, ooh, so that's the basics of the case. All right, so I'm going to check some of your comments, and then we're going to get into more of the details of the case. Wouldn't it be nice if we could apply math to all crime trials? Yeah, well, that would be interesting. Absolute mysteries and real stories. Both of them. I don't know how they got a hold of this documentary. Was it stolen? Is it plagiarized? Did they just steal the crap? Because people steal my stuff and you can't do anything about it. So I have no idea. I don't even know where the documentary originally came out, but I was happy to at least find it. Lex says, I love calculus and algebra. You get a question, you apply the mathematical rules and formulas to it, and then they have the answer. No subjectivity. You're either right or you're not. Makes life easy. It does if you got that far. I did high school algebra and said, I'm done. My son was the one who loved math, and he went way further. And I'm like, I love logic, but somehow math, I just, yeah, good for you. What was this? What was the second one up there? You're talking about which one was it? Okay, it doesn't really matter which one you see. They're basically the same thing. I'll show it to you again. I'll put the links below. So essentially these two, it doesn't matter. They're the same thing. It's just what's interesting about the mysterious murder one of the brilliant, it says crime documentary, and pissed everybody off who watched it because it is not a crime documentary. It is not. What it is it's done by Poe Valentine, who is into everything about people and situations in life. It's fascinating. It's absolutely one of the most interesting things I've ever seen. It's eclectic. It's what you want to call it. As a crime documentary, it's limited, so don't call it a crime documentary. But it's so good that I just recommend people watch it. But yeah, it's a little bit. Yeah, pyramid Illuminati confirmed. Why the heck that's there? I don't know. You got to sometimes look past the nonsense to get to the stuff that's just absolutely valuable. Leslie says, I would be a genius too if it were not for math. Yes. We're all geniuses in different ways, right? We are. True. It's like, I remember this guy, and I never could understand it. He was a father of one of my children, and we were all homeschoolers, and he was a father, and he was a NASA rocket scientist, literally a NASA rocket scientist. And that guy, I remember one day, first of all, I couldn't seem to figure out the light switch issues. So that was interesting. But one day there was there was like a hot pot of just boiling stew on the stove. And he decided he wanted to cool it down. So he put it in the refrigerator. And 5 minutes later, he comes back to pull it out of the refrigerator. And I'm like, aren't you aren't you a rocket scientist? Like, don't you know physics? I mean, I'm an idiot with science, but I'm pretty sure that the level of the temperature when it was boiling on the stove, when you put it in the refrigerator, is not going to cool down that much in 5 minutes flat. And I was like going, I was like, sometimes people who are rocket scientists aren't logical. So we all have special abilities in different areas. Let's put it that way. Okay. So, okay, let's see what more comments. Oh my God, Alexa's a pure maths major at university. Wow. But you have to be good to get a PhD. It must be murder. Although mathematicians are often eccentric and crazy. And just for the people in the United States, when you hear the word maths, in the United States, we say math, and in the UK and in India and in probably other places, they say maths, just to let you know. So that's not an incorrect, that's not a mistype. Okay, let's go on. All right. Now, what happened to Steve Haataja? All right. So he's at this location, and it seems like everything is not so bad. This guy's not a drinker, just to let you know. He had hardly ever drank anything in his life. So that beer he was holding in his hand was like, ooh, I mean, not a drinker. Then this, I want to point out what this person said. All I knew about Steve Haataja was what two mutual friends had told me. He had perfect pitch. He was compulsively neat. He was a brilliant theoretician, and he possessed a fine and subtle wit. I say, I'd like to know this guy. Sounds like a great guy. Anyway, on the day he went missing. So here it is. All right. At 6 p.m., he's at the college. At 8:24 p.m., he's gone into town. Some people see him around at 8:24 p.m. He goes to an ATM and withdraws $100. Now, this gets a little confusing. Somewhere around 9:30 p.m., he's seen again, but he's also seen he's gone into a store. He went into the store and he bought some things. He bought, and this is very, very important. He bought a bottle of peppermint schnapps. Now he wasn't a drinker, so he bought peppermint schnapps. Now some people say, "Oh, that's a girly drink," so maybe he bought that to be with a woman. And now, mind you, when he was found burned up, attached to a tree, which you're going to find out about, people thought maybe he was gay, maybe this was a hate crime. But the fact is, there were gay people in town, and one woman said, "Well, they were pretty, like, flaming gay." So, and we liked them. So there was no real anything obvious that anybody would have any issues with him. But also, people said actually he wasn't gay. So then people said, "Well, maybe one of his students got that peppermint schnapps. This is kind of a girly drink," and had her, and brought her out to this remote location where we're going to see where he was found, and and things went wrong. Now, let me tell you about peppermint schnapps. Okay. Okay. So I was in Denmark when I was 23. I went to college there for half a year, and they have a version of peppermints. They have a version of schnapps there. I went to somebody's house. Some fellow took me to his house, and in Denmark you're drinking beer, and then they would give you a shot of schnapps, or I forgot what the akavit, depends on what you call it when in Denmark. So akavit. So anyway, same thing. And you what you do is you go skål, and then you chuck the schnapps or akavit, and then you follow it up with a refreshing little beer. But if if your shot glass is empty, they refill this sucker. And I had never been drunk in my life until the age of 23, and because I wasn't a drinker. And I got after they kept refilling the freaking glass, and I said something about the football game, which was soccer, And I said it's a wrestling, it's a wrestling game. And the guy also said, "You're drunk." And I said, "No, I'm not. I need to go to the bathroom." And I got up, walking to the bathroom. I slammed into the walls all the way down to the bathroom. Yeah, I was drunk. And then I don't know how I ended up laying down someplace and waking up. I never want to drink that crap again. But schnapps is, especially with peppermint schnapps, is not just a girly drink. It's a drink people drink who aren't good at drinking, because it's strong, but it isn't. It's sweet, and a lot of people think it's something they can drink. For example, I'm not a Scotch or whiskey drinker. My son's like that stuff. I don't like that. To me, I just can't stand the smell of it. So schnapps and peppermint stuff. It covers. I don't like peppermint, but anyway, but it covers it up, and it's like sweet, and people like mint. I don't know why, but anyway. And so it's not only a girly drink; it's a non-drinker's drink. So he goes and he buys this thing of schnapps, and then he also buys a bunch of charcoal and some accelerant, which is interesting. And then he goes, let's look at the timeline. Okay, gotta go back to the timeline here. Okay, so he's gotten his money. Now they see him around. He goes in the store, he buys this the schnapps. He buys the charcoal and the accelerant, and puts it in a backpack and walks out with it. Then he goes to the college. At 11:41 p.m., he's at the college, which means he's pretty much alone at the college, because who the heck else is there at 11:41? And that's the last he's heard of. Now, 3 months later, he's found, here's the police cars, he's found at this freaking remote location in the middle of really quite far, like you can see there's nothing there. He's found in this group of trees. Okay, let me explain. Okay, let me go pull my book out here. And I want to read you, because it's not in the documentaries. I want to read you what it says about how he was found. All right. All right. It says, so he's there's the college is here, and then he left the college and went off into whatever he went off into. So walking away in the night. So remember, this is almost near midnight, and it's this kind of place. That's pretty empty. Yeah, no, it's like very, very isolated. It said the area is negotiated by foot, horse, motorcycle, or ATV. Students occasionally roam here for Mother Nature and beer. So I won't read the next part. Okay, so all right. So anyway, the sheriffs were out there, and they found, somebody called in and said, rancher calls in and said, "I found a body out here." And where's the body? He said, making his way through the trees, looking around, and this guy named Jarvis, who found the body. Oh no, that's the deputy. Jarvis pointed. Conigan, that's the who's Conigan? Let me think who this is first. Sorry, I'm jumping into the middle of the story here. Who's Conigan? Oh, that's the sheriff. Sheriff Sean Conigan got the call that Thursday on his way back from a meeting, and there was a dead body about a half a mile. Okay, take this in. This is important. There was a dead body about half a mile southeast of campus on May Queen Ranch, Sandy Bird's place. He thought, of course, of the professor, who had been missing now for more than 3 months, even if that area had supposedly been thoroughly searched. And that, believe me, when you search areas, you just oftentimes miss people. his thoughts were the same as mine. Who else could it be? Now, keep this in mind, half a mile from the college. Okay. But it said that the area is usually negotiated by foot, horse, motorcycle, or ATV. So anyway, Connigan goes up and says, where's the body? And Jarvis points to some trees. He didn't see it. And then he moved closer and he said, holy shit. And then he said, holy shit. On his first glance, he thought the body looked more like a charred log tied to a tree. You might have walked right by it. Probably people did. And told me if you hadn't been paying close attention, you wouldn't know it was a body. He couldn't tell at first if the black, ransacked mass straining against the slackness of his ligatures was badly decomposed or badly burned. As he drew closer, it became clear that the body was severely burned. In his words, 99.9% burned. Burned to the bone and black as the end of time. What little unconsumed flesh remained, such as the right calf and the back of the right arm, had leathered and was marbled with red and purulent streaks of yellow. The corpse was face down, ankles crossed, arms bowed as if embracing a lover or protecting a comrade from a grenade explosion. The round wire-rimmed glasses had been knocked askew, but were still hanging from one ear, lenses intact. Except for the smoked and ripped hiking boots, socks, and a patch of blue jeans, all clothing was gone. He was more burned front side than back. So after they unbound the body from the tree and placed it on the pink rubber tarp, it looked more like a black mummy exhumed from the depths of an Egyptian sarcophagus. Connigan thought the cadaver looked like something from a war photo, a napalm victim, a grotesque sculpture of perpetual anguish. The left hand was so thoroughly burned that it was free of flesh and cartilage, and some of the bone had gone to ash. Just want to point out, this guy can write, as just a beautiful writer. Describing an absolutely horrific scene. You couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. All right, so then they looked around. We all thought at first it was a suicide, the sheriff told me, but the ankles were bound. Although the body was bound in its midsection to the tree, and the arms were free. So the body was bound to the tree, but the arms were not bound. His body at some point had apparently fallen forward into his campfire. Remember, he brought charcoal with him. There was an empty bottle of peppermint schnapps on the ground, an unopened bottle of water, a scattering of charcoal briquettes, and a few other indeterminable items, melted or incinerated. It says here, the upper body was burned to the bone, and the tree that he was tied to was not burned. Interesting. The area all around his body barely burned. How does that happen? It was Twilight Zone shit. So, the body was finally ID'd with the serial number from an orthopedic implant, which was the hip replacement. No surprise, because everybody pretty much knew it was him. All right. So, it's an extremely unusual way to find somebody. And I look at what Poe is doing. Poe is trying to understand what happened to him. Let me see. So this is where they were out there to find him. This is the trees they found him in. This is Poe. He's walking some different paths to the location. And this path is a little bit more uphill, a little bit more difficult. Then there's another path which you can sort of walk down like a dirt road. He puts together this diagram. So we have the Math and Science building, which Haataja was clearly at. So Route 1, that's the tougher road, is the red line, and the blue one is easier but further. So Route 2, you have to walk further, but it's on a much easier ground, shall we say. And then we have, now if you see the red one coming down and the blue one coming down, this is where the ranch is. And then you see where his body was. So there's the ranch, and the body is over there in this isolated place with like the only trees in the area. Okay, the only trees in the area. Let me show you some of where he ended up, so you can understand. This is in the middle of the night. This is like midnight. Okay, so basically here in those trees, in the middle of like empty prairie, essentially. So This is hot. This is a Valentine walking with it. He's trying to show how, because there was a flashlight. Clearly Haataja had a flashlight, so he's walking with this flashlight, and he finds this location, this bunch of trees, and that's where he ends up, tied to the tree, and with an empty bottle of peppermint schnapps with charcoal briquettes, which were set with some kind of something that was able to create a fire. So that's it. That's what they have. And that's why this has been a mystery forever. I do have an opinion on this case, but I want to see what your thoughts are right at the moment. All right. Yes, I did say that supposedly the schnapps bottle was empty, which means he drank a lot of schnapps. Now, there are people who say, oh my God, he's a big guy. He wouldn't have gotten that wasted on schnapps. I'm going to say if the guy doesn't drink much, that's going to hit him. It's going to hit him enough that it's going to be strong for him. If he were taking his own life, the same way that serial killers sometimes drink alcohol before they go out and kill, it's a thing called liquid courage. It's something to take the edge off, take the fear away. It's something that you suck down, and then you're kind of not quite there at it. Not quite. It's like you can then go ahead with whatever you're doing. It's not that you're not doing what you want to do, but you just takes the edge off. And I think a guy who doesn't drink much, peppermint schnapps. I mean, I have that bad. I have that memory. So it made me never want to drink that crap again. So, schnapps could have been used to light the fire. Okay. Now, here's an interesting. I'm glad you asked that, Leslie, and I really can't answer that. There seems to be very vague information about the supposedly bought accelerant, but it's really confusing. I cannot understand that part of it. It seems to be very vague. I don't know if the police have kept that secret. I don't know. Supposedly it was accelerant because he's got to light up the charcoal briquettes. Could he have used the schnapps to light up the charcoal briquettes? Maybe that is the accelerant. It's possible. And I would have, I don't know. I'm not a person who, I don't do a lot of grilling of meat. So I've never used, have I ever used charcoal briquettes? No, other people do it and I show up. So I don't know how it actually works. So if I were going to get deeper into this, if I were hired to investigate, I would have to really get into, I would probably do a crime scene reenactment. I'd get some charcoal briquettes. I'd try to pour that crap over it and see whether it lit up really good. So I actually don't know. But that's actually a good question. Lex also says, let's see, game theory is interesting. Somebody's into game theory, which he may have been into too. Oh, that's interesting. I don't know if you could with schnapps. I think there's too much sugar in it. Vodka, yeah. Yeah, these are things that you have to, if you were investigating, you would want to. I love crime reenactment because I found so much with crime reenactment that you wouldn't believe. That it's like, I remember one time I was trying to find out if this guy was shot with a shotgun from the back seat of a car. and I bought the shotgun that was used in that crime. And then I actually happened to have the same car that the guy was in, just a freaky coincidence. And so when my son came home, I said, son, you mind sitting in the front seat of the car so I can shoot you in the head? And he was a good son. So he sat in the front seat and I'm like busy shooting him in the head because I wanted to see what the angles were. And then one of my renters arrived to him. I went, just ignore us. I'm not really killing him. He didn't even move out. I'm really surprised he didn't move out. Where was the rope? Okay, okay, wait, that was a good question. Wait a minute. Okay, Delphi says, where was the rope tied, front or back? The trees appear to be burnt in the area. I don't know what we're seeing correctly. Okay, we're seeing, mind you, this is from a documentary. I don't know how accurate anything here is. Supposedly, it was all I can say is supposedly his body was tied to the tree. It was face down. And it gets, since the information is limited, I can't do more with it. It just is limited to what I found in this book, which is the most information you'll get any place. So sometimes when you do, again, educational channel, I'm not investigating this crime. If I were investigating this crime, I'd want to be out there. I want to go to Chadron. I'd want to talk to everybody. I want to see the photos. I want to see everything. And I don't have that. But his hands were not tied, which is very fascinating. So his body was tied to the tree in a way that he could obviously do it himself, but his hands were not tied. So this is just an important thing to keep in mind. Weevil says, a horrific way to kill yourself, but at least as bizarre as a murder method. I like this comment. This is great. There are two sides to this. I would say 10% think he killed himself and 90% think he was murdered. Because they say, how could he have done this to himself? But again, like you say, Weevil, what the heck? This is the most bizarre way to kill somebody else. So that's freaky. You don't need to do all that. And how would you even accomplish that? So here is a profile. I would say this, which is why I don't think he was killed. I don't think he was murdered. Why don't I think that? Now, as far as was he depressed? Well, he was supposed to be cheerful. But as many people who understand people who come to the determination that they're going to end it, sometimes they're more cheerful at the end because they're relieved. It's like, oh, I don't have to deal with the world anymore. I don't have to deal with being an oddball anymore. I don't have to deal with the depression anymore. Don't have to deal with any of this. And they're actually happy before they take their life, which is what confuses people. They're like, what? He seems so happy. Yeah, okay, but not necessarily. So there wasn't evidence in his behaviors right before, especially since he went in and took care of things at the school, that he took his own life. However, let me tell you about some of the things that I see. Remember the half a mile? It really wasn't that far. Now, it was freaking cold. Like, I think they said 5 degrees or 5 degrees below. It was cold. I mean, myself, I hate the cold. But if you put on your jacket and all that stuff and you're determined, it's like, this is it. I'm going to walk out from this. I've finished everything. I'm going to walk out into the night and I'm going to find a remote place where I am going to, mind you, Haataja tried to take his life before and failed. He may have been concerned that he wouldn't be successful. So he decided he was going to do something that 100% would be successful. There are people, that's interesting. When I worked at the hospital as a medical sign language interpreter, I dealt with a lot of people who had overdosed. And a lot of times when they did it, or cut their wrists or whatever, they did it in such a fashion in which I knew they actually were not trying to end their lives. They were trying to get attention. They did it where they were going to be found. They didn't take enough, they didn't do enough, and people were going to find them. Therefore, they were going to survive. Now, on occasion, there's some cases where a person actually was hoping they would be found. I'll have to do a case. I have a case like that. It's fascinating, where they hoped they would be found, but the guy just didn't come over. The guy didn't show up to look for him, so it was too late. So he screwed up because he really wasn't trying to take his life. He was trying to get attention, but it didn't go well. So there's these different things that people, they're saying in their mind, what do I want the result to be? If Steven Haataja was like, okay, last time didn't go well, this time I want to be out in nature. I want to see the stars, which you're going to see in a place like that that's so remote. I want to walk away from civilization. I want to make sure that no one will stop me and no one will find me till it's way, way past. I'm going to take care of myself. And he buys the necessary things to do that. And so some people say, well, he was meeting somebody. Would you meet somebody out here? I mean, really? I mean, come on. You're going to have a date. This is not a dating place. You don't make somebody walk half a mile in 5-degree weather or 5 below, whatever the heck it was, freezing cold weather, to a remote location so you can sit under a tree and have peppermint schnapps. That's insane. So some people think that, okay, somebody forced him to go all that direction. But he was seen buying the charcoal briquettes and the peppermint schnapps on his own. So what they thought he met somebody after. So he met somebody after midnight, basically, and oh, hey, we're going to meet, and then we're going to go out into the remoteness, and we're going to build a fire with the charcoal briquettes I bought. And we're going to drink the peppermint schnapps and have sex or something. And then the guy turns on him and ties him up, maybe because it's a gay thing, and the perpetrator was from town and was pretending he was gay, and therefore luring Haataja, was not known to be gay anyway, into this tryst where he would kill him in the middle of nowhere. What the heck? It's a lot of work, and we, because his body was burned, you cannot prove if he fought back somebody. That's impossible. So you can't look for defensive wounds. How would they be there? But you would think if somebody's going to kill somebody, they're going to tie up their hands, not just their body. They're not going to tie their body to a tree and not tie up their hands, because their hands will be available to fight back and do stuff. So that makes no sense. But it does make sense that a person says, okay, I want to tie myself well enough to the tree that when I start the fire, I don't have enough time to undo myself from the tree. I need my hands to start everything. Finish the peppermint schnapps, start the accelerant, whatever it was, and light the fire. I don't know how the accelerant worked. I don't know how the fire was started. I honestly don't know. But he was clearly burned. So something happened. So he was clearly burned there. Now, some people say it's a murder because maybe if the items that were used for setting the fire and lighting the fire weren't there, then clearly he couldn't have done it himself. That's a good point. I just so much stuff is, the information seems to be very lacking in this, but I just don't believe a person would not have bound his hands as well. If you're going to go through all that, you're going to bind his hands. It makes more sense to me to tie himself to a tree and well enough that he wouldn't have time to save himself. And people say, well, how can anybody burn themselves? People do it all the time. They're like, I want to prove, people go down and light themselves on fire in front of for political reasons, and which seems totally stupid because it really never ever works. And people are like, oh, that's too bad. It doesn't change anything. You wonder why they would bother, but they do that. They set themselves on fire in a public place and suffer for that. I don't know. It's a mental issue. So if you are to the point where you decide, hey, I want to make sure this time nobody saves me, and people do really incredible things when they're depressed, or when they're finalizing their lives. They can do some really extraordinary things. And because we're not at that state, we like, oh, I wouldn't do that. Well, we're not there. Maybe if we were there, we'd do that. People jumping out of windows of 50 stories high, just some of the stuff people do, and you think, wow, would you do that? And some people kill themselves in horrible ways. And you think, why don't you take the easy way out? You know what I mean? There's better ways to do it, which there are. But sometimes they want to go out with a blast, you know what I mean? They want to make sure there's no coming back. And so you can't get inside of a mind of somebody like that, but you can say to yourself, this guy can walk a half a mile. I don't care which direction Poe went this way and Poe went that way. Either way, if you're determined, you don't care about the cold. There's people who will walk like angry at like a party. They're angry at the person they're with. They're pissed off at them, and they just walk away without even their jacket on in the middle of the night. Not a good thing to do, because sometimes you die of hypothermia, but they'll do it because they're so angry that the feeling of rage kind of heats you up a little bit. So if you're walking off into the night to go into you feel like you're crossing the line into whatever the universe has to hold for you, you may do some unique things that your hip won't bother you. You don't have a problem walking in the cold. You don't have a problem tying yourself to the tree and starting this thing and saying, I'm leaving the planet. I'm cremating myself. I'm moving on. You may not have a problem. What I do have a problem was that anybody else was involved, because it's so bizarre that it's hard to believe anybody else would think, well, I think they hardly knew the guy. He'd only been there 3 months. Nobody disliked him. Nobody had any clue of anybody disliking him. So the concept that Steve Haataja would go out and buy these things, which were found at the crime scene, and somebody at midnight would suddenly show up and abduct him with those things. How convenient. And then walk as far as they did to go some remote place. What's the point? And who would do that? And go to have a tryst? Absolutely not. Nobody is going to walk half a mile up this, all these in this area, and then have a tryst under a tree in 5-degree weather or whatever it was. I mean, nobody's going to do that. There's other places. Steve Haataja had a basement apartment. He could bring somebody home. He was at the university. He had an office, Yet somebody else might have a house. There's a motel down the street. You're really going to go and, let's go freeze while we're doing whatever we're doing in the middle of nowhere under a tree. Now let's share a bottle of peppermint schnapps. This is nonsense. So one of the problems people have is that when somebody does something that seems irrational to us, they assume that it couldn't have done it. I personally think, to me, absolutely looks like it took his own life. I see absolutely no second person involved. They found the bottle of schnapps. They didn't find anybody else's DNA but his. There supposedly some footprints, only his. Everything was only his. There was no evidence of a second person involved, because it makes no sense that there was. So I know people want to have, who killed Steve Haataja? I don't think anybody did. I think he took his own life for whatever reasons that we'll never understand. Just he had enough. He had enough, and in his own mind, maybe he knew more about the universe and thought, I want to know. Maybe he wanted to know more about the universe. He's kind of a rocket scientist guy. He's a mathematician, brilliant, and he understands that this cannot possibly be all there is. And maybe he just wanted to explore. Who knows? Maybe we're feeling sorry for him when he did what he wanted to do. I'm going to go check some of your comments. All right. So, Weevil says, we don't usually get Pat this early, but she has an emergency to fly to. Yes, I'm flying to Texas. We do have a family emergency. Hope she isn't mishandled in security. Now, that worries me. Actually, I was sexually assaulted at security in the airport, because apparently it's okay now to citizen flying to Texas, not from Texas. Apparently a 69-year-old woman flying to Texas is carrying I don't know, fentanyl in her crotch. So then you have some person feel you up, and the government allows sexual assault. So yeah, I'm hoping I'm wearing the right clothes today so I don't get felt up again. But last time it was a woman who felt me up, and people were like, well, it's a woman. I'm like, so what? I'm going to ask for the dude this time. I'm so pissed about that. But anyway, yep, that's my conclusion, Pap. Interesting. Let's see. Weevil says he would have had to be dating the woman who was trying to burn her mother on the barbecue cheese. The Maryland woman who burned her mother on the barbecue. Yeah, I don't think that was related. Not related at all. This is interesting. Suicide rate among Asperger's is insanely high. That's interesting. Life tends to be hard for autistic people, so I wouldn't be surprised. Unfortunately, that's sometimes true. It's like if you're not fitting into the world in a way that is easy and comfortable. And one of the really cool things about this book is that Poe Ballantyne's child has been diagnosed as autistic. And so it talks a bit about his child, and then about Steve having some similarities in that. And I think there is a truth to that. When it's not easy to fit into the world, obviously that can cause issues. And so much. So I love the documentary. I actually love the documentary. So go watch that. It's just so cool. And saying that has a weird kind of suicide. It is. Could it be that he killed himself and tried to make it look like murder for his reputation, family's sake, or some reason? Good point, Lex. Actually, a very good point. There are a number of people who try to make it look like, I'm glad you brought that up. So glad. There are times when people do make it look like homicide because they don't want to admit what they're doing. And also they want their family to be able to collect on insurance sometimes. There have been people who have stabbed themselves to death in the driveway, for example, and actually gotten rid of somehow stabbed themselves and gotten the knife out of there, whatever. So it looks like a homicide. And the point is so that the family can collect the insurance and also, like you point out, not blame them for what happened. It's like, or not make their family feel guilty, because a lot of times when people take their lives, the family says, why didn't we see it coming? Why didn't we help them more? How could we have stopped it? They feel horribly guilty. That's why a lot of families prefer that the person was murdered. Even if I've got so many cases that come in where the claim is the person was murdered rather than it was they took their own life, or that they fell off, like my recent one, fell off a balcony because they got drunk. People don't want to believe that stuff because it hurts them that either something just silly, stupid happened and it wiped out the life of somebody they loved, or that the person was so depressed, but they didn't know it. It upsets them so much that they'd rather believe they were murdered. And people think that seems weird, because you think if your loved one had a great life going and they were murdered, you think that would suck more than that they didn't have a great life and decided to leave. But for some reason, it does go that way. So it is possible, Lex, very good point, that Steve Haataja just decided, okay, if I take the pills again, people are going to know what happened. But if I go out there and do this crazy thing, maybe people will think I was murdered. It's possible. We will never get into his head, so we will never know, but it's a good point. Oh, that's interesting. People said the same thing about Debbie Collier. Yeah, I might have to go back over that case. That was a really weird case. And so she did such a strange thing that people thought there's no way she wasn't murdered. I'll have to go back over that. It's been a while, and I haven't looked back to see what they came up with. Beck says, the legs bound and hands free leads me to believe it was suicide. I think he tied his legs to a tree so couldn't back out. Yeah, if you tie yourself well enough, there's no way that if you're lighting yourself up, there's no way that you can suddenly undo everything. That to me is the number one key here. That because otherwise people just tie you to the tree all the way around. I mean, and sit back and go, oh, look at you, Joan of Arc. No, they're not going to probably leave you with a chance to get undone. Why do that? But yes, but if you have to actually manage the actual fire, but make sure you don't undo yourself, you tie yourself well enough with the feet, but have your hands free. So that to me is the number one key right here. And the fact that he bought all the stuff before he went there, which seems, it's not like somebody said, hey, I'm thinking of offering you tonight. Could you pick up some charcoal briquettes and some accelerant? Nobody's going to do that. So the fact that he did that, and he was alone in the store, and he was alone at the, there's just no, Taylor says, I've been drunk and have walked for distances. That's true. Now, we don't even know when he started drinking. That's a good point. That's a great point. Because if it's cold outside, you start drinking before you even get out the door. It makes you, again, in that little bit of taking away the edge. Now we're walking through maybe he's just walking along drinking like this. By the time he gets there, he's pretty trashed. I don't know. But yes, that's also very possible. Good point. Marion says, you talked recently about a man who died in a car crash and appeared to have been tortured. That was closed as suicide, and I think this one is too. Now I can't remember which. Oh my God, now I can't remember which case that was. I do so many of these. I think people remember more than I do. That's concerning. Let's see what other thoughts you have here. It really is some great thoughts. Go back down here. Okay. Delphi says, do you feel his decision to kill himself in this manner and place began before he went to Chadron? It seems to me his brilliance was so far above Chadron. I mean, he could have chosen a more accredited school. He may not have, it may be that he took what he could get at the time. Just because you're brilliant doesn't mean you have good contacts to be able to do things. People always assume if you have certain abilities that you will therefore get certain jobs. It isn't true. And I can say that for myself. I was never a schmoozer, shall we say. I'm not real good at like hanging out with the right people, get, all this stuff where you're supposed to make your contacts and chat with them. And I don't know, I suck at that. So, so the difference is the people that are good at schmoozing and getting in with the right people and maybe even partying with them or doing conferences with them or whatever they're doing with them, they get to meet people, and that the people that they meet say, hey, we'd like you at our university. uh, but if you're an awkward person or a person who's not into that stuff, your chances of meeting too many people that would get you ahead in your career kind of, it's very limited. So I think Steve Haataja, being as smart as he was, but also being what appears to be Aspergery and awkward, maybe by the time he finished what he finished, he's like 45 years, I think it's around 45. So, he got his PhD kind of late in life. And I'll say this, after a certain point in life, it's hard to get work. People don't want you when you're older. That's ageism for you. So my age is 69. Do you think a university would hire me? Hell no. They're going to hire the person who has just gotten their PhD and they're in their 30s. Because that person in their 30s, first of all, is easier to control. They have 30, 40 years ahead of them. They can work for your university. They get, they're the people that who are doing the hiring get along with them better, hang out more. They're not going to hire the 69-year-old who is probably maybe will retire soon, maybe have health problems, won't get along with the younger staff, blah, 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 blah. So you just don't get hired. That's the way the world is. So Steve Haataja was kind of the youngest PhD ever, and he had issues. So he may have taken what he could get. So I don't know that he chose Chadron because he thought, I'm just going to pick this place because it'll be far away and then I'm going to go on and take care of myself. I don't think that's true. I think he took the job he could get. But again, teaching college algebra, pretty dull for a guy of his level. I mean, it's hard. And I just have taught people who, as a professor, criminal justice, criminal profiling, in my criminal profiling program that I developed for Excelsior College, it was torture pretty much. Teaching 80% of the class, it was like, oh my God, they can't write, they can't read, they don't want to work. It was really hard. And because I didn't give them A's and B's because they didn't deserve it, I got let go. So I had some good students, and thank God I had some good students, a few good students. Most of them in law enforcement. There were some who were not, but they were put the effort out. But there were so many who were ill prepared for college and didn't want to do the work. And so when you're in an kind of isolated location, I'm going to say some of your students might have been great, but a lot of them are probably just the ones that probably hardly made it through general math. Because if they're taking college algebra, they probably never took algebra in high school. They're not real good at math. And here you are, this brilliant person, and you got these kids going, I don't understand. A plus B equals what? It's like, he seemed to be a kind-hearted person, but it can't have been thrilling for him. So I don't know, maybe 3 months in, he's like, oh my God, I can't go to another class like this. I just can't stand another day. I've been nice to these kids. I'm trying really hard, but I just can't stand the level. It's like teaching kindergarten. I don't know. Maybe that's his problem. I don't think so. I don't think, no, he planned to go there for any plan in the future. I think he went there, and it's sad because people did seem to like him, and he seemed to sort of get along with people, but maybe just he saw his future as non-existent in a way that a brilliant man would want to have so much more in his future. And there he is teaching college algebra in Chadron, Nebraska. Kind of get where he's coming from. I really do. How could you do it? Well, people do it. That's the whole point. People do it. I'm not saying I understand it, but people do it. Talking about Sean Doherty. Sean Doherty, I'm trying to see who you're talking. I know who Sean. I spoke on the Sean Doherty case. People. Oh yeah, here we go. Taylor says, wasn't there a kid who had his death ruled as suicide, but the people didn't believe it because he did his homework and put on some of his stepdad's fancy clothes? Yes, that is Sean Doherty. I responded. I did a show on that because everybody thinks it's homicide. I think it was not homicide because the simple fact that he put on his stepdad's clothing, nobody else is going to make him put on his stepdad's clothing any more than they're going to make Steve Haataja buy charcoal briquettes and go out, walk into the middle of nowhere. Sean Doherty did stuff that makes no sense for anybody else to have done. So I think he took his life. But and I offered to the family, by the way, because there was this huge thing that the police were lying and he was murdered and blah blah blah. I put out on my show. I said, look, I'm the kind of person I will if the family wants to contact me, and I will go through all the evidence. And if I come up with it really looks like homicide, I will say that. I don't, I'm from outside the investigation at this point. I'm giving a general viewpoint from my experience, but I'm willing to change it. I mean, if I find more information, I say, oh, they're right on this one. I'll come right back and say, I now see the family's point of view because I've seen all the evidence. I will support them 100%. They called me. They said they were going to send everything to me, and I never heard back. And now it's been a couple of years. Nothing's happened. So I'm going to guess that whoever was helping this, some lawyers and stuff like that, they're not coming up with anything that is homicidal. So, but yes, I mean, looked like a sweet kid, but he had some issues, and the family just can't handle it. I mean, it was horrible. I mean, it was absolutely. I mean, I raised 3 kids. If I came home and found one of my kids hanging from a swing set in the backyard, I don't know how well I'd deal with that either. I would not. It's always easier to be not the person who has lost a family member that way. That's just the way it is. Barbara says, a brilliant mathematician having to teach basic maths must be frustrating in itself. Since Steve appeared to have been socially awkward, teaching may have taken a lot of them. Yeah, I think so. I mean, people seem to think that when you have an ability to do something, that you'd be okay doing some shabby little version of that. It's not so much fun doing a shabby little version of that. For example, I love profiling. If somebody said, well, Pat, you could get a job working for this agency where you're going to spend 8 hours a day sitting in a room, and you're going to just doing some background checks, all background checks online. That's what you do every day of your life. I will be out there with Steve, tying myself to a tree. Yeah, I could do that, but that's not who I am. Now, maybe it would be great if I were 20 years old and just getting into the field, just studying criminal justice. Oh, I got this job, and I'm going to learn about doing background checks on the computers for 8 hours a day. When I'm 20 something, I might think that's cool because I learned something and I move up in the field. But I'm not moving down in the field like this. It's depressing as hell. So Steve, I mean, I got my PhD finally. I get to teach college algebra. That's a toughie. I think that's a big issue. Ooh, yeah, I wouldn't want. Yeah, I want to see what Lex says. Even first year university maths is hard. What year was he teaching? He could have taught third. I don't know. Apparently, I don't know what he was teaching, but I just think for him, it probably wasn't exactly. Again, I'm going to say this. It's difficult teaching these days because students are ill prepared when they go to college. They get out of high school hardly being able to read and write. Swear to God, I can't believe how bad it is. People used to have to get to a certain level to go to college, so you got brighter people and more invested people who are willing to work harder. And now it's turned into a nightmare. So I don't know what he was dealing with, but I was once an interpreter. Sign language interpreter in a high school in my area, which happened to be let's put it this way, most of the students in that school weren't doing so well. Now, I was in a general math class for my deaf student, general math, which was the lowest level of math you could get. The teacher, I'm interpreting this teacher, she gives out a test. She goes, okay, now let's do the test. And she walks around the room and she realizes all the answers are wrong on this kid's test. She goes, So she now is walking around going, it's not a C. And she's actually telling them the answers. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. So she helped the students put the right answers on the test, and then she gave them A's and B's. These students graduated from high school, couldn't read the damn diplomas. They can't read the diploma. 12 years in school, they can't do basic math and can't read and write. And yet they get a diploma. These school systems should be sued. But these students then go into community college and they have to take all these remedial classes because they can't do anything. And then you get them in your class if you're a professor, and they don't do the work. And I would never teach again. It was a horrible experience, horrible. And except for my few students who I was like, oh, thank God, I know there's somebody out there who's willing to do the work and can do it. The rest of them were absolutely god awful. And that's why I got let go, because I would refuse to grade inflate, and I refused to allow plagiarism. And if you plagiarize the entire paper, I gave you a 0. So what happened was these students were allowed to evaluate in this, rateyourprofessor.com crap. They evaluated me. So what happened was all the students who got C's, D's, and F's rated me. And they said, worst professor I've ever had, online or bricks and mortar, worst professor. The A and B students said, Pat Brown, best professor I've ever had, online or bricks and mortar. I told the college, I said, look, the A and B students you should listen to, because they've got no reason to stab me in the back. If they thought I sucked, in spite of the fact they got A's and B's, you should listen to them. But they thought I was great. You can't believe the C, D, and F people, because they're mad. But the school actually rated you and let you go if you didn't get high enough ratings from the students. So that meant the professors coming in, you know what they would do? They give everybody an A or a B. The students could be failing out of their class. They didn't care because they wanted to keep their job. That's the state of affairs in colleges today. It's just horrifying. Taylor says, once my undergraduate college added a football team and brought in a bunch of football guys from all over the state, the quality of my classes decreased. Awesome guys, but definitely there to play. There you go. It's horrific. It's really bad situation. Lex says he could have done something else if he hated teaching. Mathematicians work in many industries. Yes, but it's hard to get. That's what people say. It's not so easy. When you're looking for a job and you're in your 40s, it's very hard to get into places. And if you're awkward, it's even harder. And it's not as easy as people think. I'm not saying he couldn't have done it. I'm just saying people don't necessarily understand how it works. I have the same thing people say, for example, I'm an author of 8 books now. And they'll tell me, oh, Pat, they've never written a book, mind you. All you have to do is this. I'm like, I have had 4 different literary agents. I've had 5 different publishers, and I've self-published. Who do you think knows more about this? You or me? But they give me advice on how I can publish books. And why don't I do this? Why don't I do that? Because it doesn't work. Because the book industry is the way the book industry is, and I know how it works. I also know how television works. I also know how profiling works. I don't know how these industries work because I work in them. And I know what happens with age. The older you get and the more awkward you are, the more whatever, things get difficult. Now, maybe he just does bad interviews. I don't know. But he took what he could get, and it was probably not quite what he wanted. Now, could he have made something of it? Could he have gotten entranced with the town, made friends, found a significant other, got married or whatever? Could he have done all of that? Yes. But we're not inside Steven Haataja's head for whether he's depressed, whether he's gotten to the end of the line for him, whether it's just not what he wants in life. We don't know. So I'm not saying he couldn't have done something else. We all could do something else. Go to Dear Profiler Pat. I'll tell you what you can do. My Dear Profiler Pat's one of the things I talk about in my advice, my new advice channel. Is like, I've been through a lot of things, and I have good ideas. But so there's always alternatives, but it's not always easy for people to figure out the alternatives. And sometimes they can't get to the point where they could have done something because they made a decision at a certain point which prevented them from ever getting there. Some people have more tenacity than others, and that's sad sometimes, because that's why people give up before maybe they should have given up. Sometimes, it's always amazing to me to think sometimes, you know, your life can really suck, and just be in a place. I actually just did a video called "What Do I Do If My Life Sucks?" That's on my Dear Profiler Pat channel. I'll link it below. Uh, what do you do if your life sucks? Well, what's interesting is a lot of people give up, but if they'd hung in there for another year, their life may have become great. And all of a sudden, you think, gosh, thank God I didn't give up, because who knew this was around the corner? But you got to hang in long enough to get lucky, or to find a way, or to make a better choice, or to whatever. You've got to hang in long enough. But some people just can't do it. So I can't think of a good question to ask Dear Pat. Well, give it another month, you might come up with one. Oh, Lord. We have Pat of all trades. No, you know, really, one of the things about profiling, you know, I say with this new Dear Pat channel, Dear Profiler Pat channel, it's just that I've been around a long time, and I've done a lot of different kinds of things. And I approach life, profiling personality, profiling people, profiling situations. You know, profiling is profiling. It's a logical approach to things, to look at evidence and determine what makes most sense. And no, everybody doesn't have to take my advice, you know, but it's still better than Dear Abby. That's for sure. Oh, that's a great point. Okay, this is great, we evil. He may have been tipped over the edge by finding that though he was somewhere that people liked and accepted him, it still didn't make him feel any better. I like that comment. Sometimes people are glass half empty people. And no matter what you do for those glass half empty people, it's still half empty. They never see it as half full. And it's a sad thing. I had an ex like that. I think it was my ex-husband's issue, in my opinion. He was a glass half empty person. And I'd say to him sometimes, what's your issue? I mean, look at you. You're doing well in life. I don't understand what your problem is. And I'd point out all the things that were going well for him. And he'd always go, well, but this isn't happening. I'm like, and so what? They don't get everything, but hey, you're doing pretty well. But glass half empty guy. And I think it highly influenced his life and our marriage, which is why we're divorced, among other reasons. But anyway, I'm a glass half full person for the most part. I'm so thankful for the things I have, and that I may have in the future, regardless of what it is. That's the way I look at it. It doesn't mean I don't get depressed. I'm a human, and there's not times when I'm not annoyed as crap, you know, or going, what the hell do I do? I mean, I'm a real person, but then I try to say, okay, but what do I have, and what can I have in the future? But Steve Haataja and many people, the glass half empty people, possibly, where you think this is going to change your life, and it doesn't change you. So now you're there, and yes, people are being nice to you, but you still feel lonely. You still feel like you're failing in life. You still feel this, you still feel that, no matter what is around you. Maybe it was not enough, but maybe it was enough, but you still didn't get it. So I love that comment. That's great. So that's why people can be confused. Oh, everybody was so happy. People liked him. Maybe it wasn't enough. And it's a shame, but you know, he felt it wasn't, I think. And so, yeah, it's a great comment. He did suffer depression, yes. And he took he was the mathematician. Yes, he did. And he had been given a medication before for that, but I don't think it was that big in taking it. But yes, he has suffered depression. Yes, that's true. This is a very good point. Life is full of swings and roundabouts. And if you look at it that way, then you know you can think differently about life, because you just never know. I'm always curious to know what it is around that corner. Things that, you know, you could be surprised at. Like, for example, I never thought I'd be doing YouTube. I mean, that wasn't in my head, you know, but COVID hit, and I was a freaking miserable person during COVID, and I couldn't do other work that I was doing, and it was frustrating. And actually, somebody suggested, why don't you do YouTube? And I'm thinking, huh? I thought, well, what the heck? You know, YouTube is a long shot, but I'm not, you know, I'm sitting home anyway getting, you know, I was getting unemployment, and I'm stuck in the damn house. So I thought, I can't lose anything by trying it, because I'm not giving up money to do something that makes no money. And so I did it. And here I am today. It's been 4 years now. And I'm very thankful for YouTube. I love you guys. I love doing these shows. I love being able to analyze cases. And I am making a living. And so, yay. Who knew? Who knew that was around the corner? And there's just different things. And people see my art stuff that I've been doing. The senior center is down the road, and for really ridiculous cheap price, you can pay $40 a class, $80 total. You can take as many classes as you want through the college, which has the classes over there. And I take Spanish, I take art, I take all kinds of things there. And I started art classes, and now I'm doing pastel art. I'm really big into pastel art, and I love it. Who knew? I wasn't doing art before. so I just always believe you never know. You never know. And in the future, who knows what I'll do? You know, I could end up living in another country. I could end up doing volunteer work someplace in the world. I could, who the heck knows? I've been unmarried for 20 years. I haven't been in a relationship in 20 years. I haven't found anybody. And of course, I'm not necessarily expecting to ever find anybody, but who knows? Maybe when I'm 80, I'll find the person I always wanted to be with. Or maybe I'll just enjoy being alone. But anyway, you never know. Lex says, YouTube didn't even exist back in the day. True that. Thomas and I were talking about your YouTubing. He watched the video I made a couple months back, and now he wants to be a YouTuber. Well, good luck to him. Just let him know it's a long haul and a long shot. It's very difficult. My new channel that I'm putting out there, Dear Profiler Pat, it's kind of funny because, I put the videos up on this channel just because it was something fun to do, and people asked me these questions, and I thought, what the heck? And believe me, I've made this channel. I have about 62,000 at this point, 62,000 subscribers. And my YouTube, my Dear Profiler Pat videos, at least got a few thousand, views on them. But it really was in the wrong place. It should be on a channel where other people not interested in crime can get advice. So yes, I finally decided I would do that. And it's really painful. It's like, oh look, I have 100 views. I have 150 subscribers. It's okay. But that's what anybody starting a YouTube channel does, because that's what it's like, because the algorithm will not give you a break. When I put up a profiling of Pat Brown video, the algorithm picks it up because I have a subscription rate. But when you put out something the algorithm doesn't even know you exist, they're like, yeah, we're not helping. And so it's very, very difficult. People, they have to fight very hard. You have to get 1,000 subscribers, 4,000 watch hours to even become monetized. And some people are still 3 years out and haven't gotten that 1,000 people or the monetization. And like the 4,000 watch hours, people like trying to get that in it's 1 year. You have to have 1 year of 4,000 watch hours. I get that in, well, this month I got like 95,000 watch hours. So for me, it's 1 month, 95,000. But for a lot of people, it's like, oh, please let me get 4,000 in a year. And now that I've started the new channel, I'm like, please let me get 4,000 in a year. But I'm doing it because I like to help people. But it's tough. It's YouTube is very few people on YouTube. I think it's less than maybe 1/4% that even earn a living on YouTube. So don't give up your day job. That's correct. You just don't. It's a lot of work, and you don't know if you'll get any subscribers. Very difficult. So don't give up your day job. And the only reason I ever could have done it was because of COVID, because I would have had to give up my day job, and I couldn't have done that. But because of COVID, I'm here on YouTube. So again, you never know what's around the corner. And then sometimes you have to change directions. You have to say, my life is not going this way. Maybe I need to try something completely new, completely refreshing. Maybe I just need to go overseas and teach English in another country and see what happens. But not everybody can do that. People can't come up with the ideas. They're too frightened. There's all kinds of reasons that people have a hard time finding out what's around a corner, making new corners, and waiting out the painful days. I mean, it's just, people are human, so I feel sorry for what thoughts on what case? Oh, the Piketon massacre. I don't even know about the Piketon massacre. I'll do what I usually do. I'll take a picture of there, and I'll see if I can remember to look at it. Piketon, I never heard of it. All right, okay, I got to go. I got to fly to Texas, and so I'm glad you were here, everybody. This was I read this book a long time ago, and it was like, I kept meaning to do a show about it because I found it fascinating. But I kept just putting it off because I was like, what do I talk about and how will I do it? And then when I was planning to do my show on Sunday, and this was last night when I got the news from, I have a sister who's just gone into hospice, and my other sister and I are planning to go to Texas on Tuesday to see her. She has ALS, and which is the most horrible disease ever. And we've been down there before visiting, but we were planning to go on Tuesday together, and suddenly they called us and said, "Come now." And so we got this. So that was last night. So we got the earliest flight we could get, and I said, "Well, I can't do the Sunday show because I'm not going to be around. So let me see if I can come up with something for Saturday." I thought, "Oh, what about this one I've been trying to do for the longest darn time?" So that's why I decided to do that one, and I'm glad I got to do it because it's a fascinating case, and I really like Steve Haataja. I wish I'd met him. I really do. I think he would have been cool. So anyway, thank you for your prayers, everybody. I appreciate that. And yeah. So I'm sure it's not going to be the most pleasant trip I've ever been on, but I'll be there. We'll be there for my sister. So thank you very much. Thank you for all your thoughts. I really do appreciate it. And yeah. So anyway, thank you guys for being here, and I will see you for the hangout when I get back from Texas, and I don't know when that's going to be, but I'm going to try. So either maybe Thursday evening if I get back by then, or maybe Friday. So I don't know what's going to be happening. And I will do my the verdict is supposed to come in on Delphi. So I'm not taking all my equipment with me, but I am taking my iPad, and so I'm going to try to do a different methodology of uploading a video, but I do want to respond to the verdict of Delphi, so I'll probably do that while I'm in Texas. That's what I'm guessing, because so I'll try to do that. So anyway, thank you for being here, guys, and if you're new to the channel, again, like and subscribe, and check out my new channel, Dear Profiler Pat. Bye.